Welcome back to Hoochos. Today on Hoochos, we're going to be setting up and testing these. These are vertical, modular, tower hydroponic systems. These systems deliver nutrients to the plants from a pump in the reservoir, which pumps up to the top and falls down the system, delivering nutrients and water to the plants. In this video, we're going to explore every facet of this system. We're going to plant it out. We're going to do a time lapse. I'm going to explore firsthand the downside to having vertical hydroponic systems such as these. We're going to overcome that problem and get a really lovely harvest that will allow anyone to grow no matter how much space you have available to you. So in our endless search for more and more efficient hydroponic systems, it's hard to ignore vertical hydroponic systems. They're everywhere and they are extremely impressive when you see them in full production. And we wanted to make these as price competitive as possible so that you can produce hydroponic produce as efficiently as possible as well. So let's start unboxing. In the box we have the tower sections. Now the tower sections look like this, essentially a place for the pump to pump up into and for the water to rain down evenly from. So you get 5 of these sections. And the base looks like this. As you can see, it's actually a rather small reservoir, but we are going to deal with that problem very soon. We have here a top piece and the lid for the top as well. The base, which just looks like this, it's basically a big tub. This is the lid that has an access point, and this is going to hold our tower upright. An Australian adapter. Now this will be different for every country, obviously. This is a 12 volt DC pump. The 12 volt DC is good because that means that this can actually be run off a battery source. So if you had a solar panel and battery, this is only 18 watts. So this can definitely be run off a solar powered source. This lid can actually be bolted down so that you can use the weight of this reservoir to, hold the tower up if it gets heavy. And that's what all of these little bolts are for. I've actually sent myself some extra parts because I like having this many spacings, but having twice as many spacings would be better, right? And this pump has the power source, which also has a power controller, so you can turn it on and off and control the flow rate or the force that the pump's using. And this is an inline timer so that you can use this timer to control the feeding rate if you wanted to do that. This timer will allow 5 minutes on, 10 minutes on, 15 minutes on, and periods of 15 minutes off, 20 minutes off, and 30 minutes off. You can really dial in your feeding rate. We'll get into that a bit later though. This does not have volatile memory, so it will default to the fastest rate of feed if it turns off. So if you have a power outage, it's not just going to turn off and stay off. It will default to, I think it's 15 minutes on and 15 minutes off. It also comes with this seedling propagation tray and foam plug inserts. So I've actually sent myself 10 extra top segments so that with these 2 towers, I can have 10 sections on each. So I'm just going to unpack these. As you can see, it's just another section that you can add to the top of your tower. And each section adds about 15 centimeters to the top height of the tower. So I want to show you how the internals of these towers feed to the next module because it's kind of ingenious. You can see internally we have a reservoir. There's a lip that holds about ½ an inch deep of water and nutrient. It's hard to tell from where I'm showing you, but the holes that are closest to the plants are actually higher than the holes furthest away from plant spacings. And that's for a reason, because it alternates back and forth. So the lower holes will feed first and feed straight down onto the plant that's below in the series. So what you're getting is, it is feeding alternately from the reservoir that's just above. It has backup holes, and obviously the entire solution can flow through the center if there's too many roots. I'm quite excited to see the results it will produce. So these reservoirs are quite small, and I don't particularly want to keep on top of this many plants worth of that much nutrient. So we're actually going to add in something that I don't really think is optional. I think you should probably have this on a float valve feeding from a larger reservoir. We're going to add in some float valves. All right, so I'm just going to drill out some holes for the floats. Just make sure that they clear the top lip pretty much dead center between the top line and the top of the bucket. The floats take a 22mm hole saw. The holes are equally either side of the inspection port. So if you put your float valve in and you want it to be in the inspection port where you can take the top off and change the float valve orientation, just make sure that you put it between the two holes on the bucket. And I'll just be adding these hose nipples to the floats. Now these are all sold separately, but I do highly recommend adding floats and the hose nipples in and connecting up the res, which we're going to set up right now. So I'm just going to set this reservoir up over here. This is just one of the cheap Hydroland portable reservoirs. I think this one's 200 or 500, I can't remember. I think it's 500. And I'm just setting it up here because it's a little bit raised from where our systems are going to be. That's going to mean that it'll feed down into them. That'll also mean I can probably feed other systems out in the garden in the future, or even use this to water the garden with hydroponic nutrient, which we will actually cover in a future video. Okay, so as you can see, I've used this before. This was one of the ones I did testing on. I'm just going to add in a float valve to the top so that I can use this float valve to fill it without worrying about it overflowing, essentially. Make sure we're somewhat flat. So while that's filling, we're going to connect up my new favorite thing in the world. This is EVA barrier. It's a food safe and UV stable poly hose. It's extremely high quality and it's cheaper than garden hose. It's like really rubbery. It's not like the poly stuff you're used to. It doesn't kink. It is absolutely magic to work with. We're going to run that from our reservoir to our float valves, and we just connect them up with our quick connect fittings. And I'm just burying mine for visual reasons. It'll also help keep it out of the sun, but I'm not particularly worried about that. So my res is almost full. We have a pH quite low actually, which is strange. Had a bunch of rain, so I'm going to add in my silica first. And that's taking us up to 10. All right, so I'm just going to add my pH down, and I'll just add in my nutrients. So this is the Campbell's Diamond White and Nitro Cal. And I'll give that a bit of a stir as well. All right, we're at 6.5, which I'm happy with. And the millisiemens is at about 1.5, which is good for leafy greens. And I can add a bit of water to that if I want to get it down as the grow continues, but I don't think so. I think that'll be good. We can now turn on the tap that leads to our reservoirs and fill up the bases. That should start filling up from our float valves. There we go. How good. As they fill up, we can install our pump and our tower tops. This is probably going to be the easier to do if you haven't built the tower as much as I bloody have. Turn it upside down. We'll grab our pump and we can just thread our pump on and put the silicone piece over the top of the base nipple as well. If you don't want to risk this coming off, you can add on the hose clamps like so. And then we'll just feed this up through our Hydroland symbol. And then we can just place our tower top on top of our system like this. Beautiful. Now I've got most of the electrical connections in this waterproof box, but because this one's running over to the other tower, I'm just gonna run some electrical tape around the connection just to try to prevent water ingress. It's not gonna be great if it sits in like a puddle of water, but it'll just prevent it going into the socket between the two connections. It's only 12 volts, so it's not electrical hazard, but it will stop working if there's no current going through, obviously, these wires. All right, so these are mostly full now, and I'm gonna turn the pumps on, and we're gonna have a look at how the water falls through the system. Turn on our power controller, and the power is adjustable. Here, we can control the flow rate, essentially, of our pumps and how much power they're using. And you can see here, we've already got the water flowing down our tower. See how it's delivered to the top of each of the plant spacings, and then it builds a reservoir inside of our hydroponic system, so that once the plant's roots grow down, they can just explore around that reservoir. And then the top looks like this. You can see how each of the parts works in that fashion. So we just push that down, and then it starts feeding out to the top of our plants. And it feeds all the way down the towers in that fashion. Now I want to discuss the grow media types you can use in this system. It comes with foam inserts that will house a seedling, or you can use by slicing them to wrap around a plant. However, I don't think this is the best way of utilizing this system. 2-inch net cups do not fit. They don't fit within the system, so don't bother with net cups. You can get foam inserts online. I don't really like foam, so we won't be stocking these. We will be stocking Jiffy peat pellets because they fit directly into the slots perfectly. We'll also be stocking cocoa pellets in the future as well. So this system is planted out by simply taking your peat pellet, putting it into the spacing. So it sits in the groove like this. And you can see at the base of the groove, it has a little protrusion to stop it going all the way down, like so. Then, when this is placed over the top, it gets watered at the base of the peat pellet or whatever you have in the system. Really, anything smaller than the hole size will be fine. So here I've got some Mizuna that's been started in rock wool. And I've also got, this is some of Rob's produce, a little bit of everything really. We can just place it in every so often, and we can do the same with just Oasis cubes as well. They just sit down in our sections like so. And bok choy. So here we have bok choy, rocket, cos, Mizuna, we have coriander and basil. Now I've made sure that I've planted most of the big plants down the bottom so it keeps the weight low, and the smaller plants up the top. So rocket up the top, basil and bok choy mostly down the bottom. So just keep that in mind. You want to plan these towers out so they're sort of bigger at the bottom and smaller at the top, just because, you know, makes sense. As it feeds down onto the base of all of our different media sorts. So we have Oasis cubes, we have rock wool, that little, and they're all getting fed like so. So it seems to work with anything that's smaller than this. So the net cups won't work, but literally any grow media pretty much will. So there is that. I've just got these on a 15-minute on, 15-minute off cycle. You can have it on full time if you like. There would be absolutely no harm in doing that, and I might even change over to that. But I'll let you know. I've set up the time-lapse cameras and we can see how they grow.
I heard a story could be true.
This is absolutely unbelievable. These hydroponic systems are down. Look at those trees. I am worried about this side of the house. Oh my God. All my plants, they're down. What do I even do? It's a good chance to empty the reservoirs, I guess. I'm gonna leave them until this wind's over. We're gonna try and strut the beehive. Right. Joey's mad! You are angry! We did it! The bees are fine. I know you're wondering. Our beehives, they're absolutely fine. I've ratchet strapped them and they've all survived, it looks like. And over here, another survived tree down. There's going to be a lot of trees down. All right, so that storm actually tripped the power along with destroying my solar panels and my roof, which my insurance company I'm sure is very happy about. And we lost the time lapse for the rest of the grow, unfortunately, but we do have a result. And will you have a look at that result? These towers are actually incredible. Yes, they will blow over. That is the nature of a vertical tower. However, that storm, I've never seen winds anything like it. I'm probably exaggerating, but it was almost hurricane forced winds. And I have had regular wind with these towers and they seem to be sturdy enough and hold themselves upright. I didn't install the bolts that came with the system either. So I would recommend installing the bolts if you're in a windy area. You just have to place these systems where there is a windbreak and you're probably going to have a better time. When it comes to the functionality of these systems, as a hydroponic system, they're outperforming my expectations. I've always been extremely skeptical of vertical hydroponic systems, and these plants, they're not producing naturally growing plants. As you can see, if we have a look, the plants, they're kind of all bending up because the way that they're growing isn't in this natural form. They're all kind of, and there is some pest damage, but they are outside, they're not in a greenhouse. But you can see how they're sort of all leaning up, trying to orient themselves vertically. Now, this is going to mean they're probably not like marketable plants. A nice plant like this would probably go to market, but something like this, cause how it's sort of like leant over and pushing up, you probably wouldn't be able to sell these plants, but they are perfectly edible. And I reckon that this is a fantastic use of space for anyone with space restrictions. That's a whole family's worth of lettuce and greens. You can see down the bottom here where these aren't pests. This is the height that my chickens can get up to, which is silly, but I don't want to stop them eating the produce because, you know, they're hungry too. You can see that we've had success with a range of different plants, from your cos lettuces all the way through your bok choy. The basil's doing really well down the bottom here. I really haven't done much to upkeep this system. It just refills from the reservoir, and as long as you stay on top of that res, the system is just gonna keep on keeping on. So what I would like to do is I want to take one of these tower sections apart and show you what's going on inside. So we're going to take this top section here apart because it looks like there's some really mature plants that will have large root systems that we can inspect. Oh, that's pretty cool. Look at that. You could take that whole section inside and harvest. All right, what's going on in here? Here you can see how the roots have made their way around internally around that reservoir. And we'll take it apart even more. It's actually quite cool that you can just disassemble it without impacting the roots, and you could just put it back together. If we have a look into the system, you can see how the roots make their way down from the grow media and start to rely on that reservoir of nutrient solution that's created. And we can do the same over here. It's really cool how you can just, you know, and have a look at that lovely head of lettuce. How good. So I actually really like these in the situation that they're in because they're right outside of my kitchen window. So I'll probably leave these two systems where they are so I can just come out, grab the produce rather than going all the way into the greenhouse. But I do want to set a couple up in the greenhouse because, as you can see, there is a bit of pest damage because these are outside. So I do think that the wow factor of them is a really great way to get, you know, kids and other family members involved in the growing of their own produce. Like, if you can imagine being like a little kid and just looking up at this tower of food, how cool would that be? I mean, I think it's cool, and I'm basically just a big kid, right? And I think they'd make an incredible Christmas present for family and friends for the holiday season that's coming up right now. So, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Hoochos. These are available on the Hydroland website if you're interested, and happy hydroponicking. I will see you next time on Hoochos. How are you guys going, hey? Busy, busy, busy.